Hi, good morning. Am I too loud? I'm Marlene Strege, and I'm here to talk about embryo adoption. I have no notes because I think I know my story. My husband John is here, as well as our daughter Hannah over there. How many people have heard of embryo adoption? And specifically snowflakes. Snowflakes and embryo adoption. So my husband and I, John, we were married 40 years last January, but this was back in 1996, 97. And let me just say that John and I were both raised LCMS. We went to LCMS elementary schools, married in the LCMS church. Our parents were LCMS, so we kind of have a history with Lutheran. But we had infertility. We started at an infertility doctor that I was working at Sharp Hospital in San Diego. We lived in California, obviously. And they started us out real easy on some treatments. But then they got to the point where I wasn't getting pregnant, so they suggested in vitro fertilization. I was uncomfortable with this because I knew they were going to create a lot of embryos, and I was probably more concerned about the embryos, what would happen to the embryos that didn't get transferred. So then they discovered that I was not producing eggs anymore. So now this brought into a whole new other discussion of using donor eggs with my husband's sperm. And you know, they were real slick about it because they said, well, you know, if you have sisters, you and your sisters come from the same parents, same DNA, so we could use your sister's eggs, possibly, you know. I said, well, it would be my sister and my husband. First and foremost, anything we had to do had to be honorable before God, because I have to stand before God someday, and my infertility doctor is not going to be standing there with me telling God what we did. I had a discussion with a coworker about what would happen to these remaining embryos, and she said, well, maybe you could get another Christian couple to take them. And I said, oh, are they doing that now? And she shrugged her shoulders. So in our discussion, when they told me I wasn't producing eggs, through my tears, I asked the doctor, I said, do you have any embryos we could adopt? And he said, well, yeah, I've got a ton of embryos, but nobody ever asked me about those. So we wanted to know what God would think about this, about adopting embryos, so we reached out to, we had lived in Irvine the first part of our marriage, and so we knew, we went to the Lutheran church there right down the street from Concordia University in Irvine. Dr. Chuck Mansky, Bob Dargitz, they all went to our church. We knew them. So we asked them what they thought. I reached out to the Synod headquarters, to the CTCR, to Sam Nasker. I didn't know him. I also reached out to Dr. Dobson, Dr. James Dobson here in Colorado. I'd listen to him every day on my way to work. A week after I contacted him, he called me, and he said he'd never been asked this question before, and he had to get counsel. But everybody confirmed what John and I knew, that these were human lives, and if the original family was not going to go back and get them, they needed to be placed for adoption. We then went to a good friend of ours who was executive director of Nightlight Christian Adoptions in California, in Orange County. He explained his domestic and international programs, and I said, well, Ron, we want to adopt an embryo. We explained the situation, and he said, absolutely. So he had to do all the legal background, how do you adopt embryos, that type of thing. We then started our home study. Now, prior to this, and you still can do donor programs through your infertility doctor, where you go to a doctor who's had frozen embryos donated to him from clients. You pick from a list, and then he transfers them. But we said, no, these are human lives. We want to do this as an adoption. So we completed a home study. And if anybody's adopted and knows what that means, it's completing an FBI background check. It's all of our medical, financial records are exposed in this. Adoption education courses, social work visits to the house before the baby's born and after. Letters of recommendation from our pastor, from our friends that we'd make good parents. Just, I'm sure there's things I'm missing, but it was just a lot of stuff. And also writing a Dear Genetic Family letter, just like a birth mom, you would write a Dear Birth Mom letter. But then my doctor wouldn't do the transfer. We were going to do this as an open adoption, and they were uncomfortable with that. I think the reason is because it was open. They like everything closed, so nobody sues them, right? So now we didn't have a doctor. We didn't have access to any embryos. Dr. Dobson was with us the entire time. He said, you know what, you guys need a break. We'd been into this for about 9 months, nowhere closer to becoming a mom. He said, come to Colorado, and you need a vacation. So we came. It was our first time to meet with him. And then he had us have lunch with the crisis pregnancy director at Focus. We told her our story. About 6 weeks after we visited, the head of the counseling department at Focus came to her and said, I have one that's going to stump you. I have a woman that called who has 20 embryos she wants to place for adoption. And she says, I know who the adopting family is. We got them in touch with our attorney, and we were a perfect match. Perfect, in every sense of the word. We had an adoption agreement. We signed that, and we exchanged information. So they got to see our Dear Genetic Family letter, and we saw their information, history, medical, that type of thing, and we agreed. And so our attorney crafted an adoption agreement letter, a contract, I mean. And once those were signed, the original family had 3 days to change their mind. Once that date had passed, those were our children, okay? Adoption is not second best. Those were our children. They were then federal expressed to our clinic. We found a doctor in Pasadena, California. We adopted 20 frozen embryos. They were federal expressed to our clinic. Now my body was prepared to receive them. So much easier than IVF, so much easier than any of those drugs. It was just a regimen of progesterone and estrogen because I was not producing eggs anymore. That's the first thing that happens with menopause. So I was premenopausal. Menopause is a 10-year process. But those are the hormones that keep a baby fed, basically, till the placenta kicks in. So I was started on that. We adopted 20. The first transfer, they had to thaw 12 in order for 3 to survive. Freezing and thawing kills children, okay? And of those 3, the doctor explained that they had fragmentation. That's because of the thaw, which meant that they would not have a good chance of attaching to me, but if they did, there'd be nothing wrong with the child. So we went ahead with the transfer. I did not get pregnant. I wanted to go again the next month right away, so again, I started the medication. Now this has to be timed. There's a window of time when the embryos are growing in the lab, they've thawed them, and then my uterine lining has to be at the most optimum to receive them. So it's this window of time. So we have no control over that. The first slide is Hannah and 2 of her siblings. They take photographs for you in the Petri dish, not ultrasounds. These are in the Petri dish. This is the day of thaw. And he said 2 out of 3 look really good. So I thought I would get pregnant with twins. And then I asked the embryologist, because the first time they took pictures, and I didn't know they were going to take pictures, I said, please take a picture day of thaw and day of transfer. I want to see what happens overnight. So this is the next day. Hannah and her siblings had gone to her next stage of development in the Petri dish called compaction, where a fluid-filled sac starts to form as the cells are moving to one side. Hannah's the cute blonde one. We don't know which one is Hannah, but I was pregnant, and when I told my husband I was pregnant, my due date was January 2nd, and the first thing he said was, do you think you can do this before the end of the year? And so I was pregnant, and let me back up to that prior December, we wanted to thank our attorney for doing all this for free. Now, we paid for the home study, but we wanted to thank him. We took him he and his wife, to the Lambs Players Theater in Hotel Del Coronado at Christmas time. And the actress said this one line, and we'd just been matched with our genetic family. She said, "In the intricate design of each flake of snow, we find the Creator reflecting the individual human heart." And she touched a little blonde-haired girl on the cheek. And I turned to my attorney, and he turned to me, and at intermission, he says, "We now have the name of our new program, the Snowflake's Embryo Adoption Program." There were so many fingerprints from God that this is what I want you to do, right? When we couldn't find a doctor, and our attorney would go out and present to IVF clinics, and John and I were the guinea pig couple. We'd go meet with the doctor. We went to one. It was 3 doors down, literally, from UCLA, okay? And the doctor said, "Look, you don't need an attorney. I've got embryos. Pick one." And he hands me a list. It was all pre-med, pre-law for the sperm donors, because they prey on college students to help pay for their tuition, right? Egg donor, sperm donor. And then it had their physical characteristics, hair color, eye color, skin color of the egg and the sperm. And I look at it and I hand it back and I said, "This is how you choose your car based on options." I go, "This is not how we're growing our family." And he got mad at me. He was not our doctor, obviously. But let's see, my due date was January 2nd. My water broke on December 30th. And I worked at the hospital, and we went in. There was no room on the operating schedule. Hannah had turned sideways the night before. And so they had to do a C-section. And so their operating schedule started at 7:30 in the morning, and Hannah was born at 7:07. And I remember them wheeling me down to the operating room, and they're like, "Can you assist? Can you be anesthesia?" And I go, "Oh my gosh, this is like a historic birth," you know, and this is how it's happening. But I'm the birth mother, and I'm the adoptive mother. And it's a dream come true for women to give birth to your adopted child. We do not have, the only thing we don't have from a typical adoption is a adoption decree from a judge, because my daughter and my 19 other children, their legal status was property. They were not protected under the Constitution, even though they're boys and girls, their hair color, eye color, blood type, everything is already there. I've heard recently people say, "Well, life begins when the baby attaches in the womb." Hannah attached in the womb because she was hungry. She wanted to eat. She needed oxygen. It did not make her a human being. She was known to God. Our Bible verse is Jeremiah 1:5. "Before you're in the womb, I knew you." The womb is the uterus. Before you're in the uterus, you're either in the fallopian tubes or the petri dish. God knows you at fertilization. Dr. Dobson had us on his broadcast when Hannah was 5 months old, and we explained what we did. We used pseudonyms because I'm a mom. I didn't want to be doing media and that type of thing. I wanted to experience motherhood and everything. I got to experience everything, breastfeeding, and it was so wonderful. And I'm still amazed that God could use my broken body, my body was broken, to assist another human being with her life. That is the greatest thing I've done in my life, is to assist another human being. What would have happened to those children? You know, the family we adopted from, we have an open adoption. They couldn't parent any more children, like a birth mom who is unable to parent any more children, right? Adoption is where it's at. Any woman can carry any embryo. God made our bodies so that they don't reject foreign DNA from a baby. Even if it's your own egg and your husband's sperm, that baby has a completely different DNA than you do, right? through our birthing classes that we had taken, I learned about saving the baby's cord stem cells, which was huge because we're not genetically related to Hannah. And I said, John, we got to do this. This is like really the newest thing. So we saved her cord stem cells. I don't know if you remember what was happening back then in 1998 and that era, besides Y2K. Embryonic stem cell research came on the scene. And we testified before Congress with Hannah. We took Hannah, 2 years old, to Congress. I have the only diagnosis, medical diagnosis, that offers life to these embryos. The other diagnosis, scientists want to kill the embryos to hopefully get a cure for somebody else. If you look at Hannah, I think she was about day 2 from the first slide of when she was frozen. And I want you to remember these pictures because I'm going to show another picture later and you can see the difference. Hannah was too young for this research. They have to grow them in the lab till they reach the blastocyst stage, and then they suck out the stem cells, which kills the baby, kills the embryo. That's what embryonic stem cell research. There have been 0 cures to date with embryonic. It's all coming from adult stem cell. And they don't say that. They just say stem cell. They don't say adult stem cell or cord blood cell. So Hannah has her cord stem cells saved. We've banked them since she was a newborn. They took from the operating room, they did a syringe and we shipped it to the company with her cord stem cells. So those are there for her lifetime, should she ever need them, or possibly her genetic siblings, right? So we do have an open adoption, and it's a great thing to have. Any questions Hannah has is a phone call away. Any medical information. In fact, one of the girls came and stayed with us. We moved 4 years ago to Colorado here in Monument. And one of the girls has stayed with us a couple times, but she said to Hannah, she said, Hannah, if you meet so-and-so in the Springs, don't date them because we're related to them, you know. So we testified before Congress in 2001 with the second Snowflake family who have twin boys. And the director of the Snowflake program at the time. And then we had a couple years where we were lobbying. We went to Washington many times to lobby congressmen and senators. Senator Brownback was fabulous. He talked about Hannah on the Senate floor. And then we stood behind President Bush in 2006 for his first veto, when he turned to Hannah and the other snowflakes up there on the dais in the East Room of the White House and said, these children are not spare parts. And we're not going to use federal funds for this research. Skip forward then to the Dobbs decision recently, right? And I said, Hannah, is this something you want to participate in? I go, this is Roe v. Wade. And she said, absolutely. Hannah is bold. She knows her stuff. How many people can you meet that she was frozen for 2 years, 9 months? Her life was unsure what's going to happen, right? God has used her in amazing ways, and now the baton is being passed to Hannah to continue to speak up for frozen embryos, to speak out against the IVF industry. The IVF industry has a very dark side. But let me get back to the Dobbs decision. So we worked with the Justice Foundation in Texas, and they did a amicus brief. They showed the justices Hannah's pictures, and that I didn't add anything. I'm the adoptive mom. I didn't add anything to Hannah to make her Hannah. I added oxygen, nutrients, a warm place to grow and love, same thing she needs now. The issue that they brought up was the viability issue. Okay, Roe, I think it was 28 weeks, where you can support a baby outside the womb at 28 weeks or whatever, but the viability issue is now down to fertilization because of IVF. Hannah was viable when she was frozen. She was with artificial means, from what Roe said, with freezing, with cryopreservation. She was thawed. We have pictures of her going to her next stage of development outside the womb. She was viable. So that throws out the whole viability issue with Roe. She graduated from Biola University with her bachelor's in sociology. She, 3 weeks later, began the master's program at Baylor University online. And the day of the Dobbs decision, she got an email from a classmate. They had to write a paper of their internships and how the class had affected them. And Hannah stood up in class prior. She was the only one. It was an online class, so I got to hear it too. But one of the classmates they'd just gone out on their first internship, and the classmate said, "I don't understand." She goes, "I'm embarrassed to say this, but I don't understand why we're not killing people with Down syndrome." And Hannah says, "Mom, do you hear what she's saying?" And 20 seconds later, she goes, "I can't take this anymore." And she pressed the unmute. And she said the girl's name, and she said, "I appreciate you sharing your heart like this. I know this was hard." She goes, "But I have of the complete opposite opinion." She said, "Wonder if there's a law that says we have to kill everybody just because, they have the same name as you. And who's to say that we're better than people with Down syndrome?" She went on point after point after point, and I'm just sitting there with my mouth open. Wasn't planned. She just did it. But this woman that contacted her at the end of the semester, she said, "Hannah, I wrote my paper and I said that because you were the only one that stood up for people with Down syndrome, and because of your personal story," she goes, "you have changed me from pro-choice to pro-life." And this was a gal that used to escort women to have abortions in her younger years. And so, again, God is using Hannah in amazing, amazing ways. So I want to talk about some of the snowflakes. Now, the snowflake term is a registered and trademark name, so you can only use that name if you've adopted through Snowflake's Embryo Adoption. There are more programs right now. I don't endorse any one program because I tell people you have to pray about it and see where God has your child and go with that program, right? I do recommend a program that does a home study because you have to be vetted, right? John and I are fully vetted by the state of California to be adoptive parents. For people that are placing their embryos for adoption, I say choose a program that doesn't split your embryos up from the get-go, right? Now, there are times where adoptive family, will take in embryos and give birth, and then they have remaining embryos that they've adopted. What happens then is that custody, and I'm using adoption terminology, I will not use property, okay, or property language. But custody reverts back to the original family that has the embryos, and then they will choose another adoptive family. It's all open, so everybody knows where everybody lives. You don't want your child dating a genetic sibling, right? There's reasons for that. And I also want to say, regarding the IVF industry, I think IVF is okay with the following caveats. No freezing. Absolutely no freezing and thawing. It kills children. No ICSI, intracytoplasmic injection, where they pick up a sperm. If the eggs are not fertilizing, they pick up a sperm and they inject it into the egg. Okay, they're playing God, right? Which sperm goes with which egg? What's the other thing? I can't remember. No, but definitely no. Oh, no egg donors. And okay, that has created a huge problem for adults. They do not know who they can date, especially if it's a sperm donor. I think women think they're the only ones using that sperm donor, but that's not true. They are used multiple times, creating multiple embryos. And they don't, because of HIPAA, you can't find out who that is, so they don't know anything about their medical history, anything. And these children, Hannah's a licensed social worker now, and she is an advocate for frozen embryos for adoption, but she gets contacted from people all over the world, right? who have been created through IVF and some of the issues they're going through. Clearly, they are all wonderfully and fearfully made, but there's a dark side to the IVF industry that people don't understand, because our family that we adopted from had 32 embryos. Okay, 32 eggs pulled from one cycle. That's ovarian hyperstimulation in my mind, right? And of those 32, Hannah was born, and they have 3 from IVF. So 4 children. So all those other children are in heaven, right? And I know a doctor who is an IVF doctor, but in his former practice, he would ask other doctors about some of these questions. And the doctors would, like, about using donor egg and donor sperm and what that's going to cause for the children. And the doctors would say, it's none of our business. We don't have to acknowledge, we don't have to deal with that. The IVF industry is there to make money, okay? And in my opinion, it's the new Planned Parenthood. It's not regulated. We say 1.5 million frozen embryos. We don't know how many that are out there, right? Okay, so here's some more pictures. Okay, so here's Hannah. This is Baylor at her graduation in Waco. So she's 26, so everybody I'm going to show you now is going to be younger because she's the first, right? Okay. Okay, so this is the second and third Snowflake, Mark and Luke. So they were 9 months when we went before Congress, and Hannah was 2. Scientists, politicians, doctors wanted to use these frozen embryos for research. And look who they would have destroyed, okay? These boys, Luke is United States Marine and Mark is United States Coast Guard. They are now protecting the people that wanted to kill them, right? Or kill the frozen embryos, right? His mom, Luke, she just threw in this picture of Luke. Luke just came home from deployment. So, very proud of them. The mom threw in this picture, even though this is another set of snowflakes, but she goes, I just love this picture, so I wanted to send it because I asked for adult pictures of them. But this is Sam and Ben are the 2 on the sides. They are identical twins. So the mom had, I think she had 4 embryos transfer, but one of them split. The others did not. She didn't get pregnant with them. And so you have identical twins. And then they went back later, same group of embryos that they adopted. I think they adopted 17 embryos. And these are the 3 that were born. And then David is the younger brother that was born. So I'm going to show you their next picture, but I want my husband John to come up to explain, because I am not a sports person, but the 2 older ones kind of made a little bit of history this last March. And John is a sports writer. He's been mentoring these boys, and he can kind of tell you. So this is Sam and Ben now, okay? So go ahead.
Well, Sam and Ben, they both went to Oklahoma State, total big-time sports fans, got into sports journalism, graduated from Oklahoma State. Now they're looking for jobs. They each had a previous job with, and I can't remember the name of it wasn't a publication, it was an online sports thing in Oklahoma that didn't finance it right, and they ended up folding. So then they're back in the search for jobs. Sam got a job covering Mississippi, Ole Miss sports. Ben got a job covering Iowa State sports. And they're doing a wonderful job at it, but last NCAA basketball tournament, both Mississippi and Iowa State made it, and they ended up playing each other in the same regional. So they're sitting side by side covering these 2 teams, and they got actually, national television actually zoomed in on them. I mean, their story became a big story, these identical twins covering these 2 different universities. in the NCAA regional basketball. So it's been fun. It's been fun for me. I'm living vicariously through them now.
And so John had been their mentor and still is, and they also were roommates together all through college. I mean, they had the same major, the same everything, and then here this happens, and they actually became the news because there were some stories that were done on them. This is younger brother David, who is now becoming a police officer. And this is all three boys together, I think this last summer. And let's hear about some girls now. Okay, this is two sets of twin snowflakes. The family adopted 9 frozen embryos, and these two sets of twins were born. They have their own band. They have 4 CDs. They do bluegrass, country, you name it. The harmonies are amazing. They play these instruments. I think only one of them reads music. So they're called the Gilly Girls, and you can look them up online. The Gilly Girls Band. They were homeschooled, and so they travel around the country and perform and do concerts. I would highly recommend you book them because they are amazing. They are amazing, and the same adoptive parents? Yes. Yeah. They gave. So here's another picture. Look at these beauties. Okay. So Savannah is the oldest on the right. It's your right, yeah. And her twin is Morgan on the left. They were frozen for 7 years. The two in the middle are, the two oldest are 21, and the two youngest in the middle are 19. So you have Haley, who's kind of got that fringe kind of top, and then the tallest one is Jillian. And they were frozen for 9 years. They were homeschooled. I know the Hutchins boys before that were homeschooled. I don't think the twins were. Hannah went to LCMS schools, preschool to 8th grade. What would have happened to them if they had not been adopted? And they are, this is just only a fraction, right? The Snowflake kids are just, they are making an impact on this world, let me tell you. Again, fearfully and wonderfully made. All 3 of these families heard us at some point with a Focus on the Family broadcast or a magazine article or something. God used Dr. Dobson in a big way. He passed away a month ago, and Hannah, the first thing she said was, "I can't imagine a world without Dr. Dobson." And we said, "So, we can't either." And he was a huge supporter of embryo adoption, right? And I'm going to show you another picture. Okay, some of the new ones. You may have heard of him in the news. He was born, I believe, July 26. Thaddeus, snowflake number 1409. He is the world's oldest frozen embryo that has been born. 30 and a half years. Okay, we know the doctor who did the transfer. The doctor who did the transfer has a passion for older embryos. So if an embryo is 20 years or older, he will cut his price in half. Okay. The doctor's been described as best of the worst, right? Because he's a Christian. I don't agree with him 100% on things that he does, but I appreciate that he has a heart for older embryos when those would be overlooked to adopt. But here we have Thaddeus. The record before this, it was twin boy and girl in Oregon, and they were not snowflakes, but this baby is a snowflake. They went through the snowflake program. But the twin boy and girl were frozen 29 and a half years. So this baby was 30 and a half years frozen. And you probably are the first to see this because I know the mom, and so I asked her to send me a recent picture. And so this is a recent picture of him. Little Thaddeus. So great. He has a great story to tell, right? But I haven't seen any pictures in the news of him now. It usually is their newborn picture, but this is a current picture. Okay, we're going to go to our next snowflake. Oh, sorry, this is the family. This is all of them together. So Lindsay's the mom, and I'm sorry I don't know the dad's name, but this is them all together. Okay, so another snowflake. I want you to meet Samuel. Okay, and you can see the difference in 28 years from when Hannah was thawed to, this is probably a day 6, I believe, and so he's hatching. Do you see how this is in the petri dish, okay? But that outer ring that's up above is what becomes the placenta, and the baby is kind of breaking out of that. He was inside of it. Right, like Hannah was. Then they break out of it and then attach. So this is Samuel, and the mom is about 33 weeks pregnant, so he will be born, I think about November-ish, maybe. That's his brother, his full genetic sibling, who was a frozen embryo. That's Oliver. And the dad. So a nice, very nice, family picture. So we have been having, me and some other snowflake moms, we put together gatherings. So this was 2 years ago in Ohio, and these are all snowflakes. So all of these children, what would have happened to them if doctors would have used them for research? If they would have been destroyed, if the placing family hadn't placed them for adoption, right? And certainly, these children need to be adopted, however they were created, with donor egg, donor sperm, or whatever. They are all fearfully and wonderfully made, right? They need to be adopted. So what I think we need is more adoption agencies to take this on. Adoption is not second best, and we would tell Hannah growing up that she was adopted into our family, but that mommy and daddy and her all adopted into God's family because of what Jesus did on the cross. So adoption's a really cool thing. And John, my husband, he wrote Hannah's book. It came out in 2020. We have a few copies here if you want to buy them. They're $15. They can sign them for you even. Hannah wrote the foreword. And you can also get it at Amazon. I get them from christianbook.com because they're cheaper. But anyway, that's my presentation, and I'll have them come up because you guys, John and Hannah, if you have any questions for us. No questions. Yay.
What happened to the other 2 siblings? You showed us a picture of 3 of Hannah.
With Hannah?
There was Hannah and 2 others.
Yeah, so they did not attach to me. Yeah, they're in heaven. But Hannah, I forget how old she was. There was that movie that came out, Heaven is for Real. And I don't know if you know that movie, but the boy, you didn't name the baby, Mommy. She had a miscarriage. And Hannah goes, I don't want to get to heaven, and my siblings don't have names. So we named them all, and she included them in the foreword as a way to honor them.
Marlene, I just wanted to say, so I'm from Kansas, the state of Kansas, so I'm from Kansas City area. But anyway, Sam Brownback, that was so ironic that you said that, because at the same time, I had met him while he was campaigning, and my children are 29 and 30, so very close, right? So I met him while my kids were very little. He's a fabulous person, and he's very pro-life, and just being so ironic he was involved in it.
Oh, yeah. He was amazing. He was amazing, yeah.
That's really God.
Yeah. Yes?
How long has this adoption process been going on? Are you the first?
We're the first. Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, that's a good question, and I hate to quote because every program has a different cost. You do have to pay for a home study, and then you have your medical costs. which is a frozen embryo transfer with the ultrasounds and blood work that go with it, way cheaper than IVF. What I would like to see is insurance companies pay for frozen embryo transfers but through adoption, but not for IVF. Because I've had many families say, oh, my family was going to adopt, but then they found out that their insurance covers IVF. So, yeah, and then there are, I mean, there's just so many ways to raise money for it that I've seen families do. I would also like to see the federal adoption tax credit be valid for this as well, and there have been some families that have taken that. And to me, that says the IRS is saying that life begins at fertilization because they're covering frozen embryo transfer adoption. So there is a handful of families that have taken that and gotten it. And that's up to $10,000. So.
The other 14 siblings, so you had,
We had 20, and Hannah's the only one born.
and where are the others?
The 19 that we adopted? Yeah, so 14 did not survive the freeze and the thaw. And the ones that were transferred to me on 2 different transfers, they did not implant. So they died. Yeah. 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 Yes.
Just like to hear Hannah's voice.
Yes.
I'm Hannah. You heard my entire life story, thanks to my mom. I'm a licensed social worker here in Colorado Springs. I work as a full-time therapist, and I'm just opened up my own nonprofit to focus on adoption services and counseling. It's still in the works, though, so there's a lot going on, but that is my life's work and my mission. So that's why I became a social worker, to focus on adoption counseling and further support after families have adopted through an adoption agency. Any other questions for us? Yeah.
So great to meet you and hear the whole story. My wife's niece uses the Snowflake program from Missouri, and she has twins, non-identical.
Oh.
And they're doing very well. They're about a year and a half old. So
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah, so it's a long story. She has 2 girls now. They had 2 boys previously and didn't know if they'd be able to have a girl, so they used the program.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Anything else? I know we're about out of time here.
So was the adoption process, was that in California or where?
It was in California, yeah.
And
Could we,
do they provide any kind of legislation for that or any regulations? That's what I thought.
embryos are valued as property and not people in the state of California. Yeah,
In all states.
all states.
pretty
It's
much.
not any different.
I mean, it could be,
Well, IVF is not regulated
No.
anywhere, right? So I get it.
right. Right. And they want to keep it that way.
I know they do, yeah, but that's not gonna happen. There is coming legislation. I'm sorry, our precinct committee, and board, in the state of Kansas, so our legislation is coming.
And I want to put this out there. We will talk to anybody and go anywhere and share this, and I can debate this with the best of them, you know?
I think I may call you for our
Yeah.
next, for
Yeah.
the meeting, so
Yeah.
it's gonna be on the table.
Yeah.
Our legislation, it goes from January to May.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
meetings are coming.
Yeah, but I know this has been in the news. I know President Trump had to backstep from the IVF,
Yeah, because he
which
was
is
thrilled.
fabulous.
We all emailed and said, do you know there's no regulations?
Yeah, yeah, and
Stop,
I sent him a
stop.
letter on it. I said, there's a whole dark side you need to know about.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you got people like Ted Cruz,
I know,
and I think they did IVF, right?
Yes.
But they say they're pro-life.
yes.
Well, what happened to your other children?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So, yeah.
You're not very educated yet. Okay, if when you are, how are you doing that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite the advertising. I think there's a lot of people that would like to see their first adopted frozen embryo have an adopted frozen embryo. I'm open to doing it. Again, I haven't pursued that yet because I'm single and I really don't have the time. But we will see. I'm definitely open to it.
I just want to say that about that same time an operation of a baby, still in the womb. They were doing something to it, and the baby put his hand out of the womb. And I copied that picture and hung it up in an office where I was working, and they made me take it down.
I have that magazine article with the picture. Yeah, I remember that.
But not everybody agreed.
Yeah.
I saw a couple more hands. Yeah.
Is the adoption process available throughout the country now, or just in certain?
No, yeah, you can adopt, and even internationally. So some of us Snowflake moms started a closed private Facebook group just for Snowflake moms. So talk to me about your Snowflake because we'd love to get them on. But we have Snowflake moms in Canada and England because a lot of this is not legal in those countries. So they have to come here, where everything's legal.
To get the home study and everything completed.
Yeah. So. Anyway.
Thank you.